The gun pressed against Keisha's temple felt cold, impossibly cold, even in the sweltering heat of the underground parking garage. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst through her chest. The man holding the weapon, some low-level thug from a rival organization, sneered at her, his breath reeking of alcohol and cigarettes. "Wrong place, wrong time, sweetheart," he hissed. Before she could process what was happening, before she could even think to scream, a figure moved through the shadows with lethal precision. The sound of bone cracking echoed through the concrete space. The gun clattered to the ground, and suddenly she was staring into the most intense dark eyes she'd ever seen, eyes that belonged to Yoon Ji-hoon, the man whose child she was carrying. "No one," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper as he stepped over the groaning body at his feet, "touches what's mine." In that moment, with his hand gently cupping her face to check for injuries, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen, Keisha understood with perfect clarity. She'd entered a world far more dangerous than any contract could have prepared her for. 3 months earlier, Keisha Brooks sat in the waiting room of Genesis Fertility Clinic, a worn leather purse clutched in her lap, trying not to compare herself to the other women around her. They looked polished, comfortable, like they belonged in spaces with marble floors and abstract art that probably cost more than her annual salary. She smoothed down her simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned, and tried to calm the nervous flutter in her stomach. The medical bills were drowning her. Her mother's cancer treatment had depleted everything: savings, retirement fund, even the small inheritance from her grandmother. Keisha had dropped out of her nursing program, picked up 2 jobs, and still couldn't make a dent in the debt. When she'd seen the advertisement for surrogate mothers, offering compensation that could change everything, she'd barely let herself hope before filling out the application. "Miss Brooks?" A woman in an elegant cream suit appeared, clipboard in hand. "Mr. June will see you now." Keisha's heart rate kicked up as she followed the woman through corridors that smelled of expensive vanilla and something else. Power, maybe, or money. She'd researched Yoon Ji-hoon obsessively after being selected as a potential match. On paper, he was a successful import-export businessman, 35 years old, unmarried. The agency had been clear. He wanted a surrogate to carry his child. No complications, no emotional entanglements. A business transaction, pure and simple. The office door opened, and Keisha forgot how to breathe. Yoon Ji-hoon stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, his back to her, talking in rapid Korean on his phone. Even from behind, he commanded attention. Broad shoulders encased in a perfectly tailored black suit, dark hair styled with precision, an aura of absolute control radiating from every line of his body. When he turned, ending the call with a curt phrase, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her take an involuntary step back. He was beautiful in a dangerous way. Sharp jawline, full lips that seemed at odds with the hardness in his expression, and those eyes dark as midnight assessing her with the focus of a predator, evaluating prey. "Miss Brooks." His voice was deep, accented, each word carefully enunciated. "Please, sit." Keisha lowered herself into the leather chair across from his massive desk, hyper-aware of every movement she made. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he circled around her slowly, studying her from different angles. It should have felt invasive, objectifying. Instead, it felt like being seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. "You're younger than I expected," he said finally, settling into his chair with fluid grace. 26. "The agency said age wasn't a concern for you," Keisha replied, finding her voice. She'd promised herself she wouldn't be intimidated. She needed this too much to let nerves ruin it. "It isn't." His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on details she couldn't identify. "Your medical history is excellent, no genetic concerns. You completed 2 years of nursing school before withdrawing." "Family emergency," she said quietly. She didn't elaborate. The contract agency had surely provided all the details he needed. "Your mother. Cancer." It wasn't a question. He leaned back, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. "The treatment was successful, But the bills remain. Keisha lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. She might need this money desperately, but she wouldn't grovel. I'm not ashamed of taking care of my mother, Mr. Yoon, and I'm not ashamed of considering surrogacy to clear the debt. If that makes me unsuitable, it makes you loyal. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition of something familiar. Loyalty is rare, valuable. He opened a folder on his desk, sliding a thick document across to her. The contract. You'll carry my child through IVF. You'll receive full medical care, housing in a secure location, and compensation of $200,000 upon successful delivery. You will have no parental rights or claims to the child. All contact ends after birth. The number made Keisha's head spin. $200,000. It would clear the medical debt, let her mother rest easy, maybe even let Keisha return to school someday. But something in his phrasing caught her attention. Secure location? She asked. Ji-hoon's expression remained neutral, but she sensed calculation behind it. I have enemies in business, Miss Brooks. I need assurance that my child, and by extension, you during the pregnancy, will be protected. You'll live in one of my properties for the duration. All your needs will be provided for. It made sense. Wealthy men had rivals, competitors, but the way he said enemies sent a small shiver down her spine. There was something he wasn't telling her, something lurking beneath the polished businessman exterior. I want my mother to have access to me, Keisha said firmly, and I want confirmation that the medical care includes mental health support. Pregnancy can be isolating. For the first time, Ji-hoon's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. You negotiate good. Your mother may visit under supervision. Mental health support will be provided. He paused, his gaze intensifying. But understand this, Miss Brooks. Once you sign this contract, you belong to me, not in ownership, but in responsibility. I protect what's mine. Completely. The possessiveness in his tone should have set off alarm bells. Instead, it stirred something warm and unfamiliar in Keisha's chest. When was the last time someone had wanted to protect her? When had she been anything other than the protector? I need 24 hours to review the contract with a lawyer, she said. 48, Ji-hoon countered. I want you to be certain. This isn't a decision to make lightly. He stood, and Keisha rose with him. He was tall. She had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, and Keisha felt the strangest sensation, as if the air between them had thickened, charged with something she couldn't name. I have one question, she said softly. Why me? There were other candidates. Ji-hoon moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. His hand lifted, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought he might touch her face. Instead, he gestured to the window behind her. Look at this city, Miss Brooks, full of people who want things from me. Power, money, connections. They smile and lie and scheme. His eyes returned to hers, and the vulnerability she glimpsed there lasted only a second before vanishing. You looked at me like I was a person, not a resource. That's rare enough to be worth $200,000. Keisha left the building in a daze, the contract folder clutched against her chest. The subway ride back to her small apartment in Washington Heights felt surreal, like she was moving through a dream. She kept replaying the meeting in her mind, Ji-hoon's intensity, the way he'd looked at her, that moment of unexpected honesty. Her mother was asleep when she arrived home, the medication keeping her knocked out through the afternoon. Keisha made tea and sat at their tiny kitchen table, spreading out the contract pages. Her hands shook slightly as she read through the dense legal language. Everything was as Ji-hoon had described, but with additional details that made the reality sink in. She'd be moving into his property within a week of signing. The IVF procedure would begin immediately. She'd have a dedicated security team, and all her movements would need to be coordinated with his head of security. It was far more intense than she'd anticipated. But the money... God, the money would change everything. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Have you eaten dinner, Miss Brooks? YJH Keisha stared at the text. How did he have her number? The agency, probably. But why was he asking about dinner? Not yet. Still reviewing the contract. she typed back. The response came almost immediately. There's a Korean restaurant 2 blocks from your apartment. Moonlight Cafe. Tell them you're my guest. Eat well. You'll need your strength for the decision ahead. Before she could respond, another text arrived, a photo of a banchan spread, colorful small dishes surrounding a steaming bowl of kimchi jjigae. Her stomach growled traitorously. She'd been living on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for weeks. Thank you, she sent back, surprising herself. Don't thank me yet, Miss Brooks. You haven't agreed to anything. But they both knew she would. She had to. The Moonlight Cafe was tucked between a laundromat and a bodega, its modest exterior hiding the warm, aromatic interior. When Keisha gave her name, the elderly Korean woman behind the counter's eyes widened, and suddenly, Keisha was being ushered to the best table, a feast appearing before her within minutes. She ate slowly, savoring each bite of perfectly seasoned bulgogi, the tangy kimchi, the comforting warmth of doenjang jjigae. It had been so long since she'd had a real meal, something made with care and quality ingredients. Tears pricked her eyes, and she blinked them away quickly. Her phone buzzed again. The jjigae is better if you add more gochugaru. Mrs. Kim goes light for American palates. Keisha looked around the restaurant, her heart suddenly racing. Was he here, watching her? Are you having me followed already? She texted back, half joking, half serious. No. I called Mrs. Kim and asked what you ordered. There's a difference. Despite herself, Keisha smiled. There was something almost playful in his response. She added more of the red pepper flakes to her stew, and he was right. It was better. Much better. How did you know? I know many things, Miss Brooks. It's how I stay alive in my business. The word choice struck her as odd. Most businessmen would say successful or competitive. He'd said alive. What exactly is your business, Mr. Yoon? The response took longer this time. Import-export. International trade. The kind of work that requires discretion. Keisha set down her spoon, her appetite fading slightly. She thought about the intense security measures in the contract, the way he'd talked about enemies, that word, alive. Should I be worried, she typed. If you sign the contract, you'll be the safest person in New York. I give you my word. And strangely, she believed him. 2 days later, Keisha signed the contract in the same office where she'd first met Ji-hoon. This time he wore a charcoal suit, and there was a tightness around his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept well. A lawyer was present, as was a medical coordinator, who explained the IVF timeline with clinical efficiency. The procedure is scheduled for next week, the coordinator said. We'll begin hormone treatments immediately to prepare your body. Mr. Yoon has already provided his sample. Keisha nodded, trying not to think too hard about the biological reality of what she was agreeing to. She'd carry this man's child, a stranger's child, for money. No, not a stranger anymore. Something had shifted in the past 48 hours. The texts had continued, always around mealtimes, always asking if she'd eaten. Last night, he'd sent her an article about proper prenatal nutrition. This morning, a grocery delivery had arrived at her apartment. High-quality ingredients, prenatal vitamins, and a handwritten note in precise English. Take care of yourself. You're valuable now. Miss Brooks? Ji-hoon's voice pulled her from her thoughts. The lawyer and coordinator had left. They were alone. Are you certain? Keisha looked up at him. Really looked. In the natural light streaming through the windows, she could see faint scars on his knuckles, the kind that came from fighting. There was a thin white line along his jaw, barely visible, that looked like an old knife wound. This man was not just a businessman. He was something else, something dangerous. But his eyes, when they met hers, held a strange gentleness. I'm certain, she said. Are you? He moved around the desk, and suddenly he was close, too close, invading her personal space in a way that should have felt threatening, but instead felt magnetic. His hand lifted, and this time he did touch her, fingers grazing her cheek so lightly she might have imagined it. I've made many decisions in my life, Miss Brooks. Some good, many bad. But choosing you, his thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Keisha's breath caught. I think this might be the first truly right decision I've made in years. Then he stepped back, the moment breaking, and Keisha could breathe again. "My driver will move you to the property tomorrow," he said, his voice returning to its professional tone. "Pack what you need. Everything else will be provided." The property turned out to be a penthouse in Tribeca, the kind of place Keisha had only ever seen in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral tones. Her bedroom was larger than her entire apartment, with an ensuite bathroom that featured a soaking tub and a shower with more jets than she could count. "Mr. Hune will visit regularly to check on your welfare," said Marcus, the head of security, a tall black man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "You're not a prisoner, but any time you leave the building, someone from the team accompanies you. Non-negotiable." "Understood," Keisha said, still trying to process the luxury surrounding her. Marcus hesitated at the door. "He's a good man, Miss Brooks. Complicated, but good. He'll take care of you." Before Keisha could ask what he meant, Marcus was gone. That evening, as the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Keisha stood at the window and tried to make sense of her new reality. She was living in a penthouse, about to undergo IVF to carry a stranger's child, surrounded by security that suggested threats she couldn't even imagine. Her phone buzzed. "Have you eaten?" Keisha smiled, despite the surreal circumstances. "Not yet. The kitchen here is intimidating." Third drawer left of the stove. Menus. "Order whatever you want. Account is set up under my name." She found the drawer exactly where he'd said, filled with menus from high-end restaurants. She chose Thai food, something comforting and familiar. "Thank you," she texted. "You'll say that less as time goes on," he replied. "I can be difficult." "I can be difficult too," she sent back, feeling bold. "Good. I don't trust easy things." The IVF procedure went smoothly. Keisha lay in the medical suite. Yes, the penthouse had a medical suite, trying not to think about the clinical nature of conception. Dr. Chen, a kind woman in her 50s, explained each step with patience and warmth. "Now we wait," she said after the embryo transfer. 2 weeks until we know if it took. Rest, stay calm, think positive thoughts." Ji-hoon appeared that evening, which surprised Keisha. She'd expected him to keep his distance during this part. But there he was, standing in her doorway in dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that revealed strong arms and made him look younger, more approachable. "May I come in?" he asked. "It's your home," Keisha said, from where she lay on the couch, following doctor's orders to rest. "It's your home now," he corrected, entering and moving to the chair across from her. His eyes swept over her, checking for, "What? Distress? Discomfort? How do you feel?" "Strange," Keisha admitted. "It's surreal. There might be a baby forming inside me right now, your baby." Something flickered across his face, longing maybe, or pain. "I never thought I'd have a child. My life, it's not suited for family." "Then why?" Keisha asked softly. "Why have a child at all?" Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "My father died when I was young. He left me responsibilities, a legacy I couldn't refuse. I've spent my entire adult life fulfilling obligations, meeting expectations, doing what was necessary." He looked at her then, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. "I wanted something of my own, someone who would exist because I chose it, not because I had to." "That's not how parenting works," Keisha said gently. "Children aren't possessions. They're people with their own thoughts and dreams." "I know." His lips curved in something almost like a smile. "That's why I need someone like you to carry this child, someone who understands that." Keisha's heart did something complicated in her chest. This man, this dangerous, complicated, enigmatic man, was trusting her with something precious, not just his child, but his dream of something better. "I'll take care of them," she promised. "While they're inside me, I'll keep them safe." "I know you will." Ji-hoon stood, moving toward the door. "That's why I chose you." He paused at the threshold, looking back. "Get some rest, Keisha." It was the first time he'd used her first name. It sounded different in his accented English, softer somehow, more intimate. She watched him leave, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on her flat stomach, and wondered what she'd really agreed to. 6 weeks later, Keisha stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the slight swell of her abdomen. The pregnancy test had been positive 3 weeks ago, and the ultrasound had confirmed it yesterday. She was carrying Ji-hoon's child. A son, the doctor had said, though Ji-hoon had requested she not tell him the gender yet. He wanted to be surprised. The nausea had started a week ago, relentless waves that made mornings a special kind of torture. She'd been throwing up when she heard her bedroom door open, followed by footsteps. "Keisha!" She emerged from the bathroom, wiping her mouth, to find Ji-hoon standing in her bedroom, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. He held a bag from a Korean grocery store. "Marcus said you've been sick," he said without preamble. "I brought ginger tea and these." He pulled out a container of sliced Asian pears. "My mother swore by them during pregnancy." Keisha's throat tightened. "Your mother? She died when I was 12, Ji-hoon said quietly. "But I remember some things." He moved to her small sitting area, busying himself with preparing the tea using the electric kettle. Keisha watched him, this powerful man who commanded fear and respect, carefully measuring tea leaves and arranging pear slices on a plate. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I know." He brought the tea over, their fingers brushing as she took the cup. The contact sent electricity up her arm. "Drink. It will help." It did help. As Keisha sipped the tea, the nausea retreated slightly. Ji-hoon sat across from her, and for a while they simply existed in comfortable silence. "Tell me about your mother," Keisha said finally. Something shuddered in Ji-hoon's expression, but he answered, "She was strong, beautiful. She loved my father despite knowing what he was, what he did. It killed her in the end. Not physically, but—" He gestured vaguely at his chest. "The stress, the fear, the violence she witnessed." "What did your father do?" Keisha asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Ji-hoon's eyes met hers, dark and unflinching. "He was the head of a Korean organized crime syndicate. When he died, I inherited his position. I was 19 years old." The words hung in the air between them. Keisha should have been shocked, horrified. She should have demanded to leave immediately. Instead, she thought about the scars on his knuckles, the security measures, the way Marcus had said he's a good man, as if it needed defending. "You're a criminal," she said flatly. "Yes. You've killed people. Yes. No hesitation, no justification. And you brought me into this world carrying your child, knowing the danger. That's why the security exists." Ji-hoon leaned forward, intensity radiating from every line of his body. "You and the child are untouchable. I've made that clear to every organization in this city. Anyone who comes near you dies. Not eventually. Immediately." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, Keisha felt something warm unfurl in her chest. When had anyone ever protected her so fiercely? "I should be terrified of you," she whispered. "You should be," Ji-hoon agreed. His hand reached out, hovering near her face, but not quite touching. "But you're not, are you?" "No," Keisha admitted. "I don't understand it, but no." His fingers finally made contact, cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "I should never have involved you in my world, but I'm selfish. I wanted this, wanted you, too much to walk away." "Wanted me?" Keisha's heart hammered. "This is a business arrangement." It was. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Keisha's breath caught. But somewhere between the contract signing and now, it became something else. For me, at least. Before Keisha could process what was happening, before she could think about contracts and complications, and all the reasons this was a terrible idea, Ji-hoon's lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, giving her room to pull away. But when she didn't, when instead she leaned into him, her hands finding his shoulders, it deepened into something that made her entire body sing. He tasted like coffee, and something uniquely him, his hand sliding into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the angle. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Keisha's mind was spinning. "This complicates things," she managed. "Everything about my life is complicated," Ji-hoon said roughly. "But this, you feel simple, right?" A loud buzzing interrupted them. Ji-hoon cursed in Korean, checking his phone. His expression hardened instantly, the vulnerable man from moments ago vanishing behind cold calculation. "I have to go," he said, standing. "Don't leave the penthouse today. Marcus will be on high alert." "What's wrong?" Keisha asked, fear creeping in. Ji-hoon paused at the door. "One of my rivals is making moves. Nothing for you to worry about. You're protected here, but I need to handle it." He left before she could ask more questions, and Keisha was alone with her racing thoughts and the lingering taste of him on her lips. That night, Keisha couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the kiss, Ji-hoon's confession, the dangerous reality of her situation. She was carrying a crime lord's baby. She'd kissed a man who admitted to killing people, and God help her, she wanted to do it again. Around 2 a.m., she heard the penthouse door open. Footsteps approached her bedroom. Familiar footsteps. Ji-hoon appeared in her doorway, and in the dim light from the hallway she could see blood on his shirt. "You're hurt," Keisha said, immediately moving toward him, her nursing training kicking in. "It's not my blood," Ji-hoon said quietly. That should have made it worse. Instead, Keisha found herself pulling him into her bathroom, turning on the light to assess him properly. There was a cut on his forehead, shallow but bleeding. His knuckles were split open again. "Sit," she commanded, pointing at the edge of the bathtub. To her surprise, he obeyed. Keisha gathered supplies from the first aid kit Dr. Chen had left, then began cleaning his wounds with efficient, gentle movements. "You shouldn't see me like this," Ji-hoon said softly. "Probably not," Keisha agreed, dabbing antiseptic on the cut above his eye. He flinched slightly. "But I'm a nursing student. I've seen worse. Have you seen killers?" "I'm looking at one now." Her eyes met his. "And somehow I'm not running away." His hand caught hers, stilling her movements. "Why?" Keisha considered the question. Why wasn't she terrified? Why did she feel safer with this admitted criminal than she'd felt in years? "Because you've never lied to me," she said finally. "Because when you look at me, I feel seen. Because you brought me ginger tea when I was sick." She cupped his face with her free hand. "Because despite everything you are, there's something good in you, Ji-hoon. I can feel it." He pulled her closer until she stood between his knees, his forehead resting against her collarbone. "You make me want to be better," he whispered against her skin. "That's dangerous for someone like me." "Maybe danger isn't always bad," Keisha murmured, her fingers threading through his hair. They stayed like that for a long moment. Two people from completely different worlds finding something neither had expected. Connection, understanding, maybe even the beginning of something that terrified them both. The next 3 months passed in a strange, suspended reality. Keisha's pregnancy progressed normally. The morning sickness eventually faded, replaced by odd cravings and the strange, wonderful sensation of feeling the baby move. Her body changed, curves softening, belly swelling, and through it all Ji-hoon was there, not constantly but consistently. He'd appear with food from different restaurants, wanting her to try everything, determined that his child would be exposed to diverse flavors. He'd sit with her during evening TV shows, his hand resting possessively on her stomach, his face softening when the baby kicked against his palm. They hadn't kissed again after that night, but the tension between them had grown thick and undeniable. Sometimes Keisha would catch him watching her with such longing it made her breath catch. Other times, she'd find herself staring at his hands and remembering how they'd felt in her hair. But they maintained the boundaries of the contract. This was business. This was temporary. This was... "I need to attend a meeting tomorrow," Ji-hoon said one evening, as they shared Vietnamese food. "A negotiation with another organization. It should be routine, but you don't trust them," Keisha finished. She'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightening around his eyes. "No." He set down his chopsticks. "If something happens to me, don't." Keisha's hand shot out, gripping his. "Don't talk like that. I have to." His fingers intertwined with hers. "If something happens, Marcus has instructions. You and the baby will be taken care of. The full payment, plus additional funds. You'll be protected." "I don't care about the money," Keisha said, and realized with shock that she meant it. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about the contract. "I care about you coming back." Ji-hoon's expression transformed, vulnerability and hope and fear all at once. Keisha, his phone rang. He cursed, checking the screen. I have to take this. He stepped out onto the balcony, and Keisha watched through the glass as his body language shifted. Alert, dangerous, every inch the crime lord. When he came back inside, his face was grim. The meeting's been moved up. Tonight. Tonight. Panic fluttered in Keisha's chest. It's 10 p.m. These things don't follow business hours. He moved to her, cupping her face in both hands. Stay here. Don't leave for any reason. Marcus is posting extra security. Ji-hoon! He kissed her then, hard and desperate, pouring everything unsaid into the contact. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. When I come back, we're going to talk about this. About us. No more pretending it's just a contract. Then he was gone, and Keisha was left with the taste of him on her lips and terror clutching at her heart. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Keisha tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind conjuring increasingly horrific scenarios. She paced the penthouse, one hand on her swollen belly talking to the baby. Your father is stubborn and dangerous and complicated, she whispered. But he's also gentle and protective and trying so hard to be better. He doesn't even realize that he already is. At 2:30 a.m. her phone buzzed. Not Ji-hoon, Marcus, stay away from windows. Situation developing. Keisha's blood ran cold. She moved to the interior hallway, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, trying to control her breathing. The baby kicked, sensing her distress, and she rubbed her belly soothingly. It's okay, she murmured. Daddy will come back. He has to. More time crawled by. Then finally she heard the penthouse door open. Footsteps. Familiar ones. Ji-hoon appeared, and this time there was more blood. A gash on his arm, hastily bandaged, exhaustion in every line of his body. You're alive, Keisha breathed, struggling to her feet. Always. He closed the distance between them, pulling her carefully, mindful of her belly, into his arms. I'll always come back to you. Both of you. Keisha buried her face in his chest, breathing him in, feeling his heart beating steadily against her cheek. What happened? A setup. They planned to kill me tonight. His voice was matter-of-fact, but she felt the slight tremor in his hands as they held her. But I was prepared. It's handled. Handled, Keisha repeated. Meaning? Meaning you don't need to worry about them anymore. He pulled back to look at her, his hand moving to cup her belly. Are you okay? The baby? We're fine. Scared, but fine. Keisha covered his hand with hers. You said we'd talk when you got back. I did. Ji-hoon's thumb traced circles on her stomach, his eyes following the movement. I can't keep lying to myself, Keisha. This stopped being a business arrangement months ago. You're not just carrying my child. You're carrying my heart too. The words hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying and wonderful all at once. The contract, Keisha started. Fuck the contract, Ji-hoon said roughly, the profanity shocking from his usually controlled mouth. I don't want you bound to me by legal obligation. I want you to choose to stay. I'm not part of your world, Keisha whispered. I'm a nursing student from Washington Heights. You're a... say it. A crime lord, a killer. Someone who lives in constant danger. Yes. No denial, no justification. But I'm also a man who's fallen in love with you. Who wants to be better because you make me believe I can be. Who dreams of raising our son together. Not just paying you to carry him. Our son. Not my son or the baby. Our son. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. I can't have fallen in love with you, that's insane. Why? Ji-hoon asked softly. Because you're dangerous. So are childbirth and crossing the street in Manhattan. Yet you do both. Despite everything, Keisha laughed, then sobered. Because if I admit I love you, everything becomes real. The danger, the complications, the impossibility of it all. It's already real, Keisha. His forehead rested against hers. It's been real since the moment you looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster. I do love you, Keisha whispered. God help me, I do. Ji-hoon kissed her then, tender and claiming all at once, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious and breakable. When they parted, both breathing hard, he dropped to his knees and pressed his lips to her belly. I'm going to be a good father, he said to their son. I'm going to protect you and your mother with everything I am. I'm going to try to be the man she thinks I can be." Keisha's hands threaded through his hair, tears streaming down her face. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was absolutely terrifyingly real, and she wouldn't change a single thing. But their moment of peace was shattered by the sound of breaking glass. Ji-hoon was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between Keisha and the sound, a gun appearing in his hand from somewhere. "Get to the safe room," he commanded. "Now!" "Ji-hoon! Now!" Keisha ran, her pregnant body awkward but driven by fear and adrenaline. The safe room was hidden behind a bookshelf in the study, and she slammed her hand on the panel Ji-hoon had shown her weeks ago. The door slid open, and she stumbled inside just as she heard men's voices, shouting in Korean. Through the security monitors inside the safe room, she watched in horror as Ji-hoon fought 3 men. He moved with lethal efficiency, but he was injured and outnumbered. One of the attackers went down, then another, but the third got a shot off. Ji-hoon staggered, blood blooming on his shoulder. Keisha's hand went to her belly, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't let him die." The fight lasted less than 3 minutes, but to Keisha, it felt like hours. Through the security monitors, she watched Ji-hoon take down the last attacker despite his injuries, then collapse against the wall, breathing hard. Blood stained his shirt. Too much blood. Keisha overrode the safe room lock with the emergency code Ji-hoon had given her, stumbling out to reach him. "I told you to stay inside," he managed, his face pale. "And I told you I'm a nursing student," Keisha shot back, already assessing his wounds. The shoulder was bad. The bullet had gone through, which was good, but he was losing blood fast. She grabbed dish towels from the kitchen, pressing them against both entry and exit wounds. "We need to get you to Dr. Chen." "Can't move yet," Ji-hoon said, his voice strained. "Marcus is sweeping the building, could be more." As if summoned, Marcus appeared with a team of security personnel. His eyes widened at the scene, the 3 bodies, Ji-hoon's injuries, Keisha covered in blood, but he moved with professional efficiency. "Building's clear," Marcus reported, "but we need to relocate. This location's compromised." "Agreed." Ji-hoon tried to stand, swayed, and Keisha caught him, supporting his weight as best she could with her pregnant belly between them. "Lean on me," she commanded, "and don't you dare pass out before we get you medical attention." "Bossy," Ji-hoon murmured, but there was affection in his tone. They relocated to a different property, a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights that Keisha had never seen before. Dr. Chen was already there, her medical equipment set up in what looked like a fully stocked surgical suite. As she worked on Ji-hoon, removing bullet fragments and stitching wounds, Keisha sat beside him, holding his hand. "You could have died," she said quietly. "But I didn't." His thumb rubbed circles on her palm. "I had something to live for." Dr. Chen finished her work and stepped back. "You're lucky the bullet didn't hit anything vital. But you need rest, real rest. No work for at least a week." "Not possible," Ji-hoon started. "A week," Keisha interrupted firmly, using her best nursing student voice. "Or I'll sedate you myself." Marcus, standing in the doorway, actually smiled. "I like her, boss. She doesn't take your shit." "Language," Ji-hoon said weakly. "Pregnant woman present." "I've heard worse," Keisha assured him. "Now sleep. Doctor's orders." Over the next few days, as Ji-hoon healed and Keisha settled into the new location, they began to build something real. Not a contract, not an arrangement, but an actual relationship. They talked for hours about his childhood in Seoul before moving to New York, about her dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner, about the future they might build together. "I can't leave this life completely," Ji-hoon admitted one evening as they lay on the couch, Keisha's back against his chest, his hand splayed protectively over her belly. "The organization, the responsibilities, they don't just end." "I know," Keisha said, "but you can choose how you lead. You can be different than your father was." "How?" "By being honest, by protecting people instead of preying on them, by using your power to help communities instead of hurting them." She turned in his arms to face him. "You already do some of that. I've seen the community center donations, the scholarship programs. You hide it, but I know. Ji-hoon looked at her with wonder. How do you see me so clearly? Because I love you, Keisha said simply. Love sees everything. He kissed her softly, reverently. I want to marry you. After the baby is born, when you've had time to recover, I want you to be my wife. Not because of a contract, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. That's the painkillers talking, Keisha teased, but her heart soared. No, he was completely serious. I've never been more clear-headed. Keisha Brooks, will you marry me? You don't even have a ring, she pointed out. I have 36 rings. I run a criminal empire. I can get you any ring you want. He cupped her face. But I need to hear you say yes. Yes, Keisha whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. 3 weeks later, Keisha went into labor. It wasn't the calm, controlled birth she'd imagined. Her water broke at 3 a.m., and by the time they reached the private hospital where Dr. Chen worked, contractions were coming hard and fast. Ji-hoon refused to leave her side. He held her hand through every contraction, whispering encouragement in Korean and English, his face pale but determined. When she screamed curses at him during transition, he took it all without flinching. I hate you, she panted between contractions. I know, he said calmly. You did this to me. I know. I'm never having sex with you again. We'll discuss that later, he said, brushing damp hair from her forehead. Despite the pain, despite the fear, Keisha laughed. And then the urge to push came, and there was no more talking, only work. Hard, exhausting, primal work. At 6:47 a.m., their son entered the world with a powerful cry that made both parents weep. He's perfect, Doctor, Chen said, placing the baby on Keisha's chest. 10 fingers, 10 toes, healthy lungs, obviously. Keisha looked down at the tiny face. Brown skin a shade between hers and Ji-hoon's, dark hair, eyes that would probably lighten as he grew. He was beautiful. Impossibly, miraculously beautiful. Hi, baby, she whispered. Hi, sweet boy. Ji-hoon leaned in, his finger gently stroking their son's cheek. Hello, Min-jun. Min-jun? Keisha looked at him questioningly. That means quick, sharp, clever, Ji-hoon explained. And I thought if you agree his middle name could be Marcus, after my mother's father. Min-jun Marcus Yoon. It's perfect, Keisha said, fresh tears streaming down her face. Ji-hoon kissed her forehead, then their sons. My family, he whispered. My everything. Later, after Keisha had been cleaned up and moved to a private recovery room, after Min-jun had been checked and rechecked by pediatricians, the three of them lay together on the hospital bed, Keisha in the middle, Ji-hoon on one side, Min-jun in her arms. I need to tell you something, Ji-hoon said quietly. Keisha's heart clenched. What? I'm getting out. Not completely. I'll always have connections, responsibilities, but I'm stepping back from the active operations. Letting my second-in-command take over the day-to-day. His eyes met hers. I want to be present for him, for you. I want to be a father, not just a name on a birth certificate. You're serious, Keisha breathed. I've never been more serious about anything. He stroked Min-jun's tiny hand. You asked me to be better, I'm trying. You already are better, Keisha said. You just needed to believe it. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face splitting into a rare smile. Boss, sorry, Ji-hoon. Your mother's family is here. And Keisha's mother. Keisha's eyes widened. My mom. I had Marcus bring her, Ji-hoon admitted. She should meet her grandson. Keisha's mother rushed in, her eyes immediately filling with tears at the sight of her daughter and new grandson. Oh, baby girl, he's beautiful. Mom, this is Ji-hoon, Keisha introduced. Min-jun's father, and... She looked at him, saw the love and certainty in his eyes, and the man I'm going to marry. Her mother looked between them, then at the way Ji-hoon's hand rested protectively over both Keisha and the baby, and smiled. About time you admitted it. I've been getting updates from Marcus for months. I could tell from his descriptions that this was more than a business arrangement. You knew? Keisha asked, shocked. Baby, I might be sick, but I'm not blind. Her mother leaned in to kiss her forehead. I'm happy for you. For all of you. As the day progressed, filled with visitors and gifts and the overwhelming reality of new parenthood, Keisha watched Ji-hoon with Min-jun. The way he held their son with such careful reverence, the way he studied every tiny feature, the way his face transformed into something soft and unguarded. This man had killed people, had lived a life of violence and danger, but he was also the man who'd brought her ginger tea, who'd protected her fiercely, who'd fallen on his knees and promised to be better. "What are you thinking?" Ji-hoon asked, catching her gaze. "That I agreed to be your surrogate and ended up carrying your heart too," Keisha said softly. Ji-hoon moved closer, Min-jun cradled carefully in one arm, his other arm wrapping around Keisha. "And I asked you to carry my child and ended up giving you my whole life." They sat like that, three people who'd become a family through the most unexpected circumstances, and watched the sun set over New York. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new adjustments. But tonight, in this moment, they were simply together, and that was enough. Years had passed since that first meeting in Ji-hoon's office, since Keisha had signed a contract that changed everything. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights had become their true home, filled with the chaotic energy of a growing family. Min-jun was 5 now, a bright, curious boy with his father's intensity and his mother's compassion. He spoke English, Korean, and what Keisha called playground universal, switching between languages with the ease of a child growing up in New York's diverse culture. His little sister, Zara, named after Keisha's grandmother, toddled after him constantly, her laugh infectious and joyful. Keisha had finished her nursing degree, working part-time at a community clinic that Ji-hoon had helped establish. It served the neighborhood regardless of ability to pay, staffed by people who understood that healthcare was a right, not a privilege. Ji-hoon had kept his promise. He'd stepped back from the violent aspects of his organization, transitioning into more legitimate businesses, while maintaining enough power to protect what was his. He was different now, still dangerous when necessary, but tempered by love and purpose. They'd married in a small ceremony 2 years ago, a blend of Korean and African-American traditions that celebrated both their heritages. Keisha's mother had cried through the whole thing. Marcus had been Ji-hoon's best man, giving a surprisingly emotional speech about watching his boss become the man he always knew he could be. On a quiet Sunday morning, Keisha found Ji-hoon in Min-jun's room, the two of them building an elaborate structure with blocks while Zara helped by knocking things over and giggling. "Appa, when I grow up, can I be like you?" Min-jun asked in Korean. Ji-hoon paused, then switched to English so Keisha could understand from the doorway. "You can be better than me, son. That's what every father wants, for his children to surpass him. But you're the best," Min-jun insisted. "I'm trying to be," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Every day, I try to be worthy of your mother and you and your sister." Keisha's heart swelled. She moved into the room, settling on the floor beside them. Zara immediately crawled into her lap, and Keisha kissed the top of her daughter's curly head. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Keisha asked. "What?" Ji-hoon's hand found hers. "That day in your office, when you said you wanted someone to see you as a person, not a resource." She squeezed his fingers. "I'm glad I saw you. Really saw you. I'm glad you agreed to carry my child," Ji-hoon said softly. "Even though you ended up carrying my heart too." "Ew, gross," Min-jun declared. "You guys are being mushy again." They laughed, and Keisha pulled all of them close. Her husband, her son, her daughter. Her impossible, beautiful, hard-won family. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility. Inside, in this brownstone filled with love and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family, Keisha Brooks Yoon had everything she'd never known she needed. She'd signed a contract to be a surrogate. She'd ended up with a lifetime of love, and she wouldn't change a single thing.